Of course, in the last panel, we spoke a lot about who will fund it, right? And I think that becomes a very, very important, I think many of you had this question, who will fund it? Nagma spoke a lot about where is the money going to come from, right? Um, at NASCOM Foundation, we work with almost 15,000 NGOs across the country. The first question is, when we look at these organizations, they don't understand the basics of technology. Then getting into this conversation to say open technology, closed technology, it doesn't make sense to anybody, right? So the first part is even understanding, is there a need? How do they incorporate it? And who's going to fund it? That's the first part of it, right? Of course, there are philanthropies who are talking about supporting it and have been supporting it over the years. But even in today's time when corporates want to support it, right? There are limitations of CSR budgets. Not that there is no willingness in the corporate. Unfortunately, government has put certain limitations out here, right? Then there's a question of how will CSR support it, right? If you look at all of this, I think we have a good mix out here. We have some techies who are passionate about technology, building open software, but also for social impact. And we have some specialists from the CSR world who actually are trying to see how they can incorporate all of this into whatever social impact work they do. Gunjan, let me just start with you right now. Sorry, you're the first one. um, as I said, FOSS is one separate conversation. But do you think, and I know that Microsoft really works in capacity building of a lot of nonprofit organizations. Do you think the sector is ready to talk about it? Where is the lack, and what needs to be done about that?
Yeah, so I think I'll also give some context before coming to this question. And if you look at any lay person like us, even though we are into CSR space or working in CSR, or when we partner with non-profit organizations, right? We drive as one collaborative unit. Now we ourselves are not that way tech savvy, so it starts with us. And fundamentally, what we also do is that how we continuously upgrade ourselves so that, whatever is our vision, we can take that mind share to our partners. Now, I mean, mostly we would agree, arguably or otherwise, that technology is a socio-economic enabler, and we saw during COVID time how technology has helped. Now, any entity, any product, it has both pros and cons. So I think what we see is when technology is ever evolving, we also need to, and we means human being and collectively as organization, we need to continuously learn into it. So what we also believe that for the Microsoft Philanthropies philosophy perspective, it's not that we drive, it is our collaborative effort. And that's where the whole training or capacity building is an integral part of it. For from this financial year onwards, we have actually carved out a separate focus areas and actually dedicated team which is called or which is a part of NGO capacity building. So I mean, you would also see that going forward we would work with non-profit sector a lot more on this particular area. So it's not just about capacity building for technology, but also about some of the let's say strategic part of it. So, let's say policy part of it, and it is a mutual learning for both of us. And as far as technology is concerned, I think definitely we also believe that when we innovate, when we disrupt technology ecosystem or market, it is our first responsibility to ensure that the disruption cannot be negative, and rather there would be opportunity out of that. So before we actually drive anything, we also get into mode of capacity building. So definitely, whether I mean, few years back, along with NASCOM, all tech companies have started working on, say, future skills. Now, again, in future skills, there are various deep technologies. So we are also going deeper into it. Let's say how we work on user aspect of artificial intelligence, which everyone will be impacted. And this is not, it has not to do only with the developers, right? As a lay person, I will interact with chatbots when I open a bank's website or something like that. So fundamentally it becomes our collective response, our responsibility, that collectively we create that capacity building. So we do have those initiatives, and we also partner a lot, not just with non-profit but even with private sector organization. I mean, one of the example with Nirbhay, we recently in some of the rural areas, we started working on, of course, tech-based education and skilling, but essentially we also get into more of overall faculties capacity building, trainers capacity building, how we actually run that as a program. Also work with non-profit partners, not just their leadership but actually those who are involved into driving programs, even understand operational part of it. So I think different layers we would go and collaborate for capacity building. So that's, I hope, I mean, I could
Yeah, I think
throw
what I
some insight.
gather from you also is that somewhere capacity building also in terms of the leadership of the organizations need to understand this and their capacity needs to be built. So that could be one of the aspects, right?
Yeah, that's true, and that's where I said, see, mind, of course, mind share building, and it should not, it would not come as any, say, imposition, but it is like how collectively, collaboratively, we see this as like how we see theory of change. So this also a kind of a transformation that we would bring. So, and also technology is constantly evolving, so it is not a one-time process or effort. We do. Or we would like to do it on a regular and ongoing basis.
Talking about collaboration, I think what I understand is FOSS is nothing new, but a country like India has been able to do it because of all the collaborations that different partners who are very passionate about it have come together and done it. Satish, you have a solution which is you're wearing a T-shirt with that branding, Bhamni, and we all have seen that outside. I know it doesn't come from the CSR side of it, but it comes from a commitment from the company that they want to work on something, technology and social impact. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on it? And how are you ensuring that others are being able to use it?
Thank you, Nidhi. Am I audible? That's the first question usually you ask. So, I was just telling Nidhi that, I mean, while ThoughtWorks has a CSR program, it's not something that we talk about much, right? Because where Bhamni comes from and a lot of work that we do in social impact comes from is, predates our CSR program. And that essentially comes from a commitment for commitment to social impact that technology can have. So we have always considered ourselves as core technologists, right? And we believe in the power of technology to impact lives. But we're also pragmatic enough to say that technology is just a tool, right? I mean, we don't have a slavish belief that technology is universally good or technology can solve every problem, right? And trying to balance that is essentially been a big part of our journey. So I think some of you were in the room when my colleagues were talking about Bhamni. You also seen the pop-up. So Bhamni, for those of you who do not know, it is an open source electronic medical record system. So in short, it's used by doctors, hospitals to capture patient data, capture medical information, and so on and so forth. Right, it replaces your paper files. And we didn't start by saying that, hey, we need to build this product. It came out of a need when we met with the folks from this hospital called JSS, or Jan Swasthya Sahyog, in Bilaspur in Chhattisgarh. They had called us in to do an assessment of how technology could help, and the situation at that time was, so the JSS hospital, for context, is a rural hospital, and it serves villages in probably like a 30-kilometer radius around the city, around the hospital, and the situation was that people would kind of come camp out there for like 3-4 days before they were able to see the hospital, right? See the doctors at the hospital. And it was completely paper driven at that time. So even finding a patient's record was very difficult. And sometimes people would have multiple files or multiple identity cards. They would not remember what they'd done before. And doctors would have a hard time providing the highest quality of care because they didn't know the previous records, right? So that obviously affects the care. So when we built Bamni, our solution was to kind of work with them to actually figure out what would help the doctors provide the highest quality of care. And we didn't say that, okay, we want to start by building something brand new. We looked to see what is already out there, right? So today Bamni is an agglomeration of 4 different open source products that each fulfill a specific need, but we kind of made it work together to help doctors provide the highest quality of care for patients, right? So this kind of combines like, okay, the power of technology as well as saying that I'm sure we're not the first people facing or encountering this problem. Let's see what's out there and see if we can repurpose it and use it to solve the larger problem.
And I think what is needed is, I'm coming from a very different, the other side of the sector. What is needed is when it comes to all these softwares and solutions, more sharing, information sharing. I think while you may be doing it with a few hospitals and non-profit organizations, but there are hundreds of them who don't know how to use it.
Correct.
And again, it comes back to the same that, if they learn how to do it, how do they get the technology, how to, in terms of the capacity, all of that. Karthik, I know you're very, very passionate about AI, ML, IoT, all of that. You want to share a few examples with us that how you, and both you individually and Google is really helping to come up with some of the solutions and how the social impact sector is adopting these solutions?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Nidhi, and thank you, folks, for the opportunity to represent Google's point of view. And sometimes I'll also have my own personal point of view, which will intermingle both. So, yeah, so it's a great question. So when I got an invitation to be part of the panel, I said CSR and FOSS. So we don't have any brand within Google saying CSR and FOSS. So I don't know, because it's corporate social responsibility can't be a side business. It has to be a main business of the company. So that's probably the reason why we don't have CSR, because it's not a small niche which you just do as an after effect or as an afterthought, right? Your business has to be socially responsible and make money out of being socially responsible. There's nothing wrong in making money, but you have to do it in a socially responsible way. So that's why maybe we don't have the CSR department. Everybody says, just send it to your CSR department, you get something out there. I say, where will I find a CSR department in Google? And FOSS, again, so again, here we don't have a group or something within Google which does open source or free open source software, because most of the stuff what we do as a business model is free and open source. And somebody was asking me from the FOSS team, what do you guys do? So I want you to come and share with the rest of the folks what we do. So one of the things what we do is that we always start any project based on a need. And once we establish a need, there's a bunch of engineers, passionate engineers who start working on it, who get the code out there, and all of us know that that code with just by the few engineers contributing makes no sense, right? So then you quickly put it out there, and then you start thinking of building the solution at scale, right? Right from day one, it's at scale. And so today everybody is connected in some form or other. All the techies are connected. So the idea is once you put it out there, you'll always find a lot of passionate people who are driving things for that, right? So how are you able to quickly get it up there and crowdsource people to start contributing to the code becomes the trick to anything that goes out there. So for which, so how do you make a community effective? So that's a very commonsensical question, right? So certain communities thrive, certain communities become very big, certain communities become dormant, certain communities after a few days or months or years die a natural death. So if you dig deeper into that, so what are the things that's keeping people going in the community, which is actually growing, is passion. You have people who are really passionate. People who are thinking, what is in it for me is not there. Like if you have a company who's doing it saying, hey, what is in it for me? At some point in time, I want to monetize it and things like that. I mean, it's good thought, but you have to have the balance because you can't try to do this before it actually fructifies into something really big, right? So you need to have the patience for things to take off and then figure out a business model to go ahead and do that. So there's a lot of folklore of the Android open source, how it started, how it evolved. So people, when they made those investment decisions, really think of the money aspect of it. It is all about social good and thinking how does a mobile platform help somebody and how standardization helps and things like that, right? So eventually the models come. So you'll never have any way you start an open source project, you'll never have the monetization aspect very early on. But you have to look for the social's good and you have to look for it at a scale. How are you able to get many people involved, both on both sides of the equation, the user side as well as on the contribution side at a very quick level. So you have to identify that particular need, and then you see how you make that niche big enough for a lot of people to start jumping at the bandwagon. So some things that has worked for Google is the fact that we've always tried to keep it very simple, keep it very honest and open, and very transparent. We've never been, a lot of projects have failed, so people don't know the failure rate. You guys only know the ones which have been successful. A lot of projects which has failed. But it doesn't really affect our morale, right? So we still go on and go on. We keep churning out because we know that's the way to build software. That's the way to build a business model at some point in time at scale. So you have to be having passionate engineers who are working on it. You need to have people who are selfless, committed, and who have the right balance to figure out that let it go on for some time before you actually, the business models will emerge, but you need to have the patience to be there. And sometimes it may not emerge, but you should also be open for it.
A very interesting fact. I know the nonprofit community is very resilient, but there were a lot of organizations yesterday who were talking about they're trying technology for the first time at this scale, and what if it will fail? I think what's most important that comes out of your conversation is that we need to keep on trying, right? Some things will work, some things will not work, but we need to have that openness to say, okay, we need to try, and maybe our solutions will be found. Nirbhay, I know I think the moment I spoke to you about this conversation, you were the most excited. And I think it's been more than 2 decades that you have been very passionate about FOSS. I also know from a CSR point of view, you're somebody who finds solutions, right? Because you're trying to see is that if you want to support your own organization, you're trying to figure out how to work around it, right? So I know CGI has done a lot of supporting a lot of small non-profit organizations to create solutions, and most of them based on open source, right? A little bit more sharing on that, and I know there are some brilliant examples out there.
Thanks, Nidhi. Thanks, organizers, for bringing me here. I think I was fresh from college about 2 decades back, and the first project I ever worked on technology and education was FOSS. I really regret today because I never spent time again so much. Wonderful to speak about FOSS, especially someone who really burnt hands. It was not easy then. For sure, the way we sold the way we penetrated in schools was more about how does X versus Y, the boots up, right? The booting time is in seconds that you're able to see a system really going up. From an angle of from there till today, what we see is a huge difference. In terms of the FOSS, as I agree with both of you, plenty full of resource-rich resources available for free, especially when it comes to school segment and the higher education piece for sure, which one can really access and thrive for sure. The beauty of it for sure is about the language. You can customize to as many languages as possible. From a CJ point of view, today what we do is we work on 2 segments. One for sure, when we work with about 100 schools, 100,000 children that we reach out through our coding and various programming. We also speak about FOSS for sure. There is a reason to it. Today we have been speaking about proprietary and some of these technologies. We felt somewhere there is a point in to talk about free sources for sure. There is an opportunity to think a little different, not what has been taught to you regularly, but going beyond what's obvious. Uh, Students do get surprised when when you speak about Android or Raspberry Pi. Today I work with a lot with students. There is a surprise element for sure. Oh, there is called FOSS for sure. What I feel is today, it's all about building awareness and education, which is really lacking today. Unfortunately, with the not-for-profit sector, there is always a reservation about adopting technology, and then talk about FOSS, they are very, very far behind. So therefore, there is an opportunity for sure to build awareness and education. And talking about CGI today, we work very closely with nasscom in building solutions around undercard. We call it Tech for Good. We precisely took a decision saying that we will build all the technology solutions on open source. The reason being that, one, we want to make all the source codes available for anyone to pick it up, be it framework or otherwise, we'll pick it up. Today, while our employees work full time or pro bono, we engage grads and they build solutions and we give away these codes to the colleges, saying that you're free to make break some of those codes for sure in terms of the frameworks. Second, we also feel when it's about working with not-for-profits, the problems are more or less similar. It's about tweaking here and there. You are able to reach out to many people. Today, we have built technology solutions, especially in inventory management. We realized we work with some of the largest non-government organizations where work with women. Some of them work with, especially in the area of selling e-commerce portals. So we realized over the time, the solutions require, you need to have a framework or a foundation more or less similar. What you really need is to step back and see how you can tweak in some of the solutions and you can deploy it. The third biggest fear that NGOs or not-profits have is about how do I really take care of my license fees, which are expensive otherwise when you build on a proprietary. Today we are very proud to share that we also help them for a year to begin with platform point of view. We give them cloud space to begin with. And given that they are open source, it's much easier for them to build and roll it out year on year. And the fourth biggest thing is about training per se. It's much simpler. That's what I've realized. Maybe it's my mindset that feels that it's much simpler to understand. Because it's all about you can pick up any system, high end, you can start coding and start learning it. So therefore, from a capacity building, it was much easier to build, deploy, and transition to the NGO partners. So this is how we really worked. Been working. I hope we continue to work. And especially when it comes to school segment, which is something that we're exploring, one day I'm hopeful that we work on some of those FOSS technologies at school segment.
Thanks, Nirbhay. I think I can vouch for that because, when we have tried to do this along with CGI, this whole transition has been much easier. And I'm talking about very small organization, how they have actually they've been able to adapt to this very easily. And of course, in the long run, because of being the open software, the cost, licensing cost, all of that really comes down. Just a quick question to the audience. Have any of you really tried to get whatever you're doing supported through CSR? And you've been successful in that? Anybody really tried? Any hands up on that? Okay. So very few people, right? In the sense that since the topic is on CSR and FOSS, while a lot of us approach philanthropies, we are not approaching CSR enough in the right way, right? And we have, of course, we have this example with CGI, but we also have a few other examples where I could be working on livelihood and I'm making my proposal and what I want to do with software a part of that proposal. Most corporates will look at it. When we go standalone to a corporate and says, help me to build the capacity of my organization, that's where our proposals are rejected. So there is a way that we all can work around it. CSR, because of its compliances, is a little difficult to crack when it comes to tech capacity building, but I'm sure we all can work around it. I've been told that I have to stick to the time and I want to open it up to the audience, but if I can just ask Gunjan and Nirbhay one set of question, and to both of you one set of question. Gunjan and Nirbhay, if you had to very quickly say, from a non-profit community point of view, if they want to get into both FOSS and CSR, where do they start? And for both of you, I think when it comes to really building their own capacity, training, what do you feel is the biggest limitation and how do they solve those?
I think one line answer is that it perfectly fits to digital literacy. Nina necessarily could be any proprietary or not proprietary. It's a perfect fit for be it about awareness, deployment, capacity building. Could be building solutions as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I do agree, and we do have, like, first step is digital literacy, but you also highlighted one part is it's our own product or solution. So at the end of the day, we also cannot go beyond certain steps because then there are compliance issues and all. So first is all about knowing that how this product or solution will help, right? I mean, there are different productivity suites which and everyone is using, whether it is Microsoft or Google Suite and all, which generally we start with emailing to using Excel to PowerPoint, and then probably getting into Power BI applications, which gives the analytics, visualization, right? So, I mean, those are basic level digital literacy, and there again, we also like to collaborate because one organization can only do limited, but when there is a collaboration, then we can reach out to a scale. So, yeah, I think knowing about what we want to achieve, that is something will be really a first step. But again, this we need to still find out a solution that under the given CSR rules, how we make it actually accessible while not showing endorsement of our own product or solution.
Thanks. I think so. It's both digital awareness, literacy of the nonprofit community, and the openness to incorporate all of that, right? Of course, that has to be supported by the corporate wanting to be supporting it further and making their way around it, right? Because I do feel that in spite of government limitation, where there's a will, there's a way, right? Yeah. Satish.
Sorry, the question again, the second part.
It was more in terms of, when it comes to from a very technology point of view, right? If a nonprofit organization needs to start, where do they start?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think the first thing would be to not try to build it yourself, right? I mean, if you're a nonprofit, if you're not a technology organization, don't try and build it yourself, right? There's a very good chance that the problem that your organization is facing is not unique in the world. And there's also a very good chance that there's an open source solution that probably fits exactly what you're doing, or it comes pretty close, right? So the advice would be to focus capacity on what you do best, which is probably engaging with the community, working on your core mission, right? Rather than trying to build technology, which is just a tool, right? And there are plenty of resources out there. And these days, I think it's also possible if you recognize what tech can do for you, it's possible also to maybe pull together or, build a stack or build a set of, technology tools that work for your organization, entirely using, SaaS tools that are available, right? Somebody else manages the tool, the technology. You create an account, like you use Gmail, and just use it. And many organizations these days, including product firms, they probably, if you are an NGO and you ask them, they'll probably give it to you at reduced rates or for free that you can take advantage of, right? So I mean, you don't need to even think about cobbling together open source tools. So if that's an option, like even ahead of open source, I would suggest that. So that allows you to focus on your core mission. But if that is not an option, and you feel like you either have volunteer capacity or an in-house tech team, or you think you can do it yourself, there's probably tools that you can pull together to do what you want, right? As an example, data collection is probably common need for most NGOs on the ground, right? I mean, the people that you work with, you need to collect data about them so you know the community that you're serving better. And the thing would be, the gradual movement would be from, pen and paper to maybe Excel sheets to, something on the mobile. But again, I mean, there are a bunch of tools that allow you to do this and possibly even customize for that very specific, sectoral area that, whether it is water and sanitation or health or, livelihoods, that's already out there. So I think with and there are tools out there to help you, figure out which of these are usable for you. So I think that's probably the advice that I would have. And it's not to scare people away from building technology. It's possible that there's a very unique area that you are thinking of building. Just yesterday in one of the Aspire conversations, there's talk about building a platform in the aftermath of disasters to collect or crowdsource information about loss, and that's probably something that's worth building on top of other open source tools, right? But for majority of use cases, I think you are better off pulling together or using solutions that are already out there.
So it's in the end, it's like leave it to the experts, right? Let the experts really look at what technology and how to do that, right?
Yeah, and it's not from like experts versus non-experts, right? I mean, it is like if it's thinking not from a there are people or technologists or technology firms who know it better. Nobody else should come. It's not coming from that point, but it is probably pointless to repeat things that have already been done,
Yeah,
right? So we
agree.
focus our
Yeah.
energies on
Absolutely.
where nobody else can make a difference but you.
Absolutely. Karthik.
So I have to totally agree here that so NGOs have to primarily focus on one thing that really matters is data. And so how are you collecting the data? It could be a spreadsheet, it could be a piece of paper, it could be a mobile form, it could be Google Forms, it could be anything. But you need to be very, very passionately focused on collecting data, whatever it could be. And that data is the new gold, right? And without that, your NGO has no meaning. So if you're not focused passionately about collecting the data, storing the data, then technology can't do anything. In today's time and age, without data, you can't come up with predictive analytics. You can't predict what is likely to happen, what if scenarios and all can't happen. For all that, you need data. Once you have data, then there are a lot of algorithms, a lot of tools, a lot of people, a lot of self-help stuff, which is that's the whole the tech world is going to, right? People are talking about, or not talking, already coming up with, startups are coming up with no-code solutions. They're able to start some things very quickly. So the idea is tech is already commoditized. It's no more a barrier that, hey, you need to get this done from a bunch of techies. Yeah, there are certain areas. But then at least the new generation of people, right? You people who are right now getting graduated from colleges and things like that, they're already coders by default. It's almost like math and science, right? So people know this at a basic level. So for them to really use tech and things like that, it's no matter. So what is important is tech is commodity and it will happen. There's a lot of avenues, a lot of vehicles for you to do. But what is for you as an NGO? The main thing is data. So how are you collecting the data? So ultimately, for you as a business to grow, you need insights. You need to know what's going to happen so that you can prepare. And how can you get that? If without data, what will you do? You'll just be shooting all over the place, right? So you need to collect data, and so that's the gold digging one needs to do. And then once you have data, then you'll figure out what to make out of that data. And that's when tech comes, and that's an easy problem to solve. But the bigger problem, I would say, is that in the social sector, the willingness, having the right methodology, right framework, right business model, right organization, right kind of funding to start collecting the data, that's the big heavy lifting one needs to do.
Yeah, I think data is the biggest way of scaling up, replicating, because everybody is, as you mentioned, that insights, because I think to scale up, to sustain anything, you need data. And I think if you really looked outside in the experience zone, a lot of solutions that are shown outside are all based on better data collection and better data management. I've been shown the board, and which means that, but I'm sure some of you have questions. So, and I don't want to break the record of being on time. Any questions from the audience? Yes, if you could just pass the mic there.
Just one.
Hi, this is Sumit from Center for Wildlife Studies. And thank you for the wonderful conversation. My question, on what Nidhi was saying, that how do you fund technology? I think we have been very successful on CSR on that, is because we again do make technology as a cost of the program. And a small part of it, so that multiple programs fund our technology. So that way we have been successful. But my question essentially is around. So when it comes to building a product which is more public facing, like if as an organization I'm building something which will go back to the community and they will use it and have a logo of the corporate on that, it is something that a corporate is really willing to fund. But when it comes to an internal thing that we have to make, let's say an ERP system or a HR management system or finance management system, this is where we actually face more difficulties, saying that how do we fund our internal tech requirements, and rather than funding a more community outreached product. So how do you see that changing from the CSR side, so that we also build our internal capacities using technology and be more efficient, and not just think about, okay, this technology has to have 20 million beneficiaries, then only somebody will fund it, otherwise not. So how do you change that mentality in terms of CSR and people funding it?
So I think it's not a company perspective, but definitely there are there are initiatives. For example, providing technology as pro bono, and I mean Microsoft does work with organizations like TechSoup or with NASSCOM Foundation or NASSCOM in the past as well. So idea is that how we provide technology which are essential for working, right? So it's not just that you provide grants for branding, but more importantly, how one can use technology, how organizations can use technology. Then there are, on the top of it, there are training programs, or there are even building the capacity of the resources as well. So that those kind of solutions are available already, and that even if you go to our website and also, so those are freely available as well.
To be very candid, if you're going to go ask any corporate that I want money to build technology for my HR solutions, nobody will give it to you, right? That's a fact. Okay, so, but in terms of if you say I want it for my community and all of that, they will give it to you. But the corporates also have, a number of them are doing, there are many such corporates who are actually running what we call it a skill-based volunteering program, where they will identify your need. We know that volunteers have built solutions for MIS. They have built solutions for data management, because this will not come from your CSR, right? So it's an indirect CSR angle where they may, because they're supporting a program of yours, they will bring in resources out here, the techies out here to help you to build it. So you have to look at an indirect route. The CSR will not allow that. So you have to start with that understanding and acceptance, and then find, but we have managed to solve these problems for a lot of non-profit organizations, so you can probably use that route. Yeah, CSR. Yeah, so you know that, right? So there are many such corporates who are actually helping to do that, yeah? Yeah. Any other questions? Right. Then we can end in time, right? Great. Thank you so much. Thanks a ton. I think it was a lovely conversation, and really hopeful that CSR will open up and we can find more ways of supporting this. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.